I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but it feels like when it comes to online content around investing, people tend to make it sound so easy. And I guess it makes sense because online criticism, cancel culture can really discredit someone, over their past mistakes. But I felt so compelled to share my portfolio, my journey of investing over the past 8 years, because I know that there might be people watching this and feel like, maybe I'm not alone in my struggle in my investing journey. That, I don't need to give up on investing or conclude that I'm not cut out for this, just because I've made a few bad investing decisions. For some context, I'm a 32-year Singaporean with a portfolio of around $251,000 today, and I'll be sharing my story, split into four chapters, and each chapter corresponding to a phase of my working and investing journey from 2017 to today. And in this chapter, I'll be breaking down my income, my saving or investing strategy, or the lack of it, my challenges and struggles, in that season, and ultimately the lessons learned I got coming out of that chapter. First chapter is titled The Hot-Headed Circus of 2017 to 2019. Now, back then, I just finished university. I had about $12,969 in my bank account, from working part-time. And my first job was to be a financial consultant or an insurance agent, whichever you call it. And I was doing, pretty well. Like in the first few years, I was averaging around, $6,000 every month in my income. Got, promoted after 1 or 2 years, and things, were doing pretty well. But I was also spending a lot, especially on travel. To give you some context, in 2019 alone, I traveled to Thailand, Norway, Japan, Switzerland, so I'm spending a lot on traveling and, therefore only saving about maybe one third of my salary, which for some it might be really good, but as a young working adult that didn't have much liabilities, definitely it I could have saved a lot more. But the biggest problem wasn't so much in my savings, but more towards my investing plan, because it was just a big disaster. I was just investing into extremely risky assets that I really didn't understand. Like for example, I was invested into funding societies, which was a platform that pulls investors to give loans to SMEs. And I just participated in a bunch of different loans and end up a lot of them defaulted. And I just lost a bunch of money. And I was also investing a lot into cryptocurrency. And I know some of you might be thinking like, oh, if I invested in cryptocurrency back in 2017, that, I should have made a lot of money. And to that, I say that, that may be true if I held on to it. But to be honest, I was just treating cryptocurrency like a game back then, buying and selling just based on rumors or emotions without really much of a plan. And therefore, you didn't really have much returns. Let me just give you an example of some of the trades I did back many years ago, if you can see. Like I was just, oh no, that's not a good idea. Yeah, but I was just simply just buying and selling, on Coinbase back then, and didn't really have a plan. And that's why I titled this chapter "The Hot-Headed Circus." And because I was invested in so much risky assets, that I kept so much cash on the sideline just to reduce that risk. And it didn't hit me until many years later that I would have a lot of wasted opportunities, back from those years for keeping cash on the sidelines. And so in 2019, I ended the year with a portfolio value of around $79,000, split into $56,000 in cash, $5,000 in funding societies, $5,000 in crypto, and $13,000 in an endowment. And the endowment was one that, started off in university, and saving a few $100 every month at about 3.6% annual returns, which even though today I would not invest in an endowment, but back then at least it was better than, some of the super risky investments that I did. And from that, I really learned three very important lessons from that season. Number one, don't invest in something you don't understand, because when there is volatility or enters a bear market, you just quit investing. I'm quite sure of it. And number two, save aggressively when you don't have much liabilities, and try to hold yourself accountable to that rate. And thirdly, cash is comfortable but rarely profitable. At this moment, if you feel like, maybe my struggle isn't that big, granted, but in the next two chapters, you realize that I definitely struggle a lot more than in this first chapter. Moving on to chapter 2, is titled Leftover Crumbs. I definitely became wiser and more diligent in investing. I've divested away from funding societies, and when it comes to crypto, I just held it passively. And I pivoted to investing into US stocks as well as in the Singapore Savings Bond, which some that might not be aware of what it is. It's a government issued bond that is available for anyone that has a CDP account. And I bought the August 2022 issuance, which is around 3% annual returns that is given out every half yearly. So on the allocations front, things are looking better now. However, in 2022, the US tech stocks had a major correction, and a lot of my stocks were affected by it. But that wasn't really the main struggle. The main struggle in this season was actually that my income started to decline in this few years from 2020 to 2022. A large part of it was because as I learned more about the industry of financial planning, I realized that my perspectives were diverging from what I felt the industry expected of me, and that caused my sales, my commissions, and therefore my income to drop. Eventually, by the end of 2022, I was probably earning around like $4,000 a month, which was a big decline from previously six over $1,000 a month, and therefore my savings rate dropped significantly, which is now around maybe 20%. Which for some people it could be a good amount, but for me, I felt like I should be saving a lot more, which is why I titled this chapter "Leftover Crumbs." And so in 2022, I ended the year with a portfolio value of around, where is it? $109,000 split into these categories shown in my slide. It would be a lie if I say that I wasn't disappointed with how things are going in terms of my career and in my investing journey. But it is how it is. And on the bright side, I learned a few things that season. Number one, what is really my appetite towards risk, when we enter a bear market. Then number two, I feel like this season formed a new resolution in me to really focus and build my career. And thirdly, to learn what it means to live a bit simpler, to cut out unnecessary expenditure. It's humbling, but I think it's a learning journey. Chapter 3 is titled The Great Reset because in this year I changed career and started doing sales for a tech startup. However, because the industry wasn't doing so well, it really took me perhaps over 60 applications to land this job, and still it was quite a junior sales position. My salary was around $4,700 a month, thereabout, and even though it was lower than even my job after as a fresh grad, but I was definitely happier and felt more joy doing this job. A quick lesson here, maybe not so much to do with investing, but with career change, is that if you want to do it, don't be afraid, but do it as young as you can. And when you go ahead, just don't look back. There is a saying that goes, you don't need to worry about progressing slowly. You need to worry about climbing the wrong mountain. And it's really humbling to tell people I had switched careers because it felt like, I had failed. But then again, I remind myself that, maybe it's not so important to worry about, what other people, thought of me, right? And the good thing is that once I've accepted that this is a junior position, but at least in an industry that I enjoyed being in, the journey from here should be an upward journey. And since 2023 was pretty much focused on this career switch, I did not make much changes to my investing portfolio, and I ended the year with a portfolio value of around $131,000 split into bonds, cash, US stocks, crypto, and endowment cash value. The last chapter is titled Magic Equation because after a few tough years, things started to come together. The startup that I was working at got acquired in January of 2024 by a large global SaaS company. And so in this new company, I was doing sort of the same job, but selling a different product now, but my salary increased to about $7,600 thereabout per month. And when I saw the commissions coming in, I was really, overjoyed. Uh, and it felt like things were really, quite a breakthrough, right? And because I learned not to let my standard of living increase together with my income, I managed to increase my savings rate now to around 45%. And I also decreased the amount of individual stock picks I did with my portfolio and increased buying into index funds such as the S&P 500, as well as into a global equities fund. I bought more Singapore savings bond during the August of 2024 issuance, which was around 3.22% annual yield. And then my crypto and my stocks, really started to outperform during these 2 years. And even, most assets actually reached all-time highs during this period of time. And so my portfolio ballooned quite significantly. To give you some context, it reached around $251,000 split into these following categories. I still keep quite a bit of cash on the sidelines because I'm about to purchase a property, after getting married. But this is where I realized there is a magic equation to how portfolios grow, which is essentially having a high savings rate, and staying invested over time and into quality assets. That's where your portfolio skyrockets. It's actually quite a simple equation, but I can't believe it took me this many years to internalize it. And that's also the scary part, right? Because if any of these factors falls, if any of these factors are not present, the whole equation fails. And this is why I created this channel, to let people know that it's okay if you haven't get investing figured out by your 30s or even your 40s. That if you have not achieved fire, that doesn't mean that you should give up or that investing is not made for you. And if you made it to here, perhaps you relate to my story or is at least a bit curious in my investing journey. So do consider subscribing, to the channel, follow along if you bring comfort to your own journey.